You are now listening to the Minority Trailblazer podcast. Let the story begin.
One time for the lovers, two times for the ladies, three times for the brothers, four times for the babies. Do you love her? 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 One time for the lovers, two times for the ladies, three times for the brothers, four times for the babies. Do you love her? 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 Brown skin, love her brown skin, love her brown. Brown skin, love her brown skin, love her brown. She my brown skin, love her brown skin, love her brown. She my brown skin, love her brown skin. Hold me down.
Welcome to the Minority Trailblazer podcast, and I'm your host, Greg Eel, the culture change agent. On this show, we interview young, successful minorities in a variety of fields to educate, empower, and inspire our current and future generation of leaders. And today, we got a show for you, man. First and foremost, I'm excited because this is the debut of the first show produced on the Minority Trailblazer Podcast Network. First of 4 more shows this year, man. So we're going to have your Monday through Friday lockdown. That's the wrong word. But yeah, we got the host of it, Tiana Renae, on this show, man. This is a legendary podcast. I can't wait to share y'all this episode. Get excited. What I need y'all to do, though, I need y'all to stop what you're doing right now and either put it in your notepad, or if you want to, you can actually put it just in your podcast phone. You can pause it for a second. But type in Cope for the Culture podcast. Cope for the Culture podcast. Go ahead, search it. It's the first podcast under the Minority Trailblazer Network imprint. I'm excited about it. I know y'all going to enjoy it, so definitely tune in. It will be broadcasting every Wednesday on all platforms. I do want to give one side note, though. It's Thursday, May 30th. And iTunes is acting real funny. They rejected it the first time. We had to make some changes. We resubmitted it. So if you search it for today, Thursday, May 30th, it may not pop up. But I promise you, by at least early next week, you can find it. However, right now, it's on Spotify, Cope for the Culture. It's on SoundCloud, Cope for the Culture, and all that good stuff. All right? So without further ado, we're going to jump right into the show. And just get excited because I got a couple more announcements coming, but that's going to be next week, man. So y'all enjoy the episode. Make sure you leave a review. I'm telling how we have thousands and thousands of downloads and we got like 279 reviews. Like, no, stop that. Stop what you're doing right now. If you have not left a review on iTunes Podcast, Apple Podcast, leave a review right now. All right. We need to get the things up to 300 or so by next week. All right. Love y'all. I appreciate y'all patience. I appreciate y'all grace. Y'all dominate today. Y'all dominate today. Remember, y'all dominate the day. And let's get into it. Every time we do a show when somebody's live and direct, it's always a classic. So I'm going to call this show a classic, man. I'm excited, as you can probably tell my voice, because it's been a long time coming. I know probably around, actually, I probably mentioned it in 2018. Matter of fact, let me get to the bio first and let me jump into it. She is the founder of Healthy Pleasures Incorporated and is a licensed professional counselor in the state of North Carolina. And she's a mental health / self-care advocate. She's also a social entrepreneur, published author of Letters to a Queen's Soul, The Journey to Queendom, and 2 self-care planners. She holds a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling from the North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. Mental health and self-care is her passion, as she has worked in the mental health field since 2008. And she is very aware of the mental health needs in our society. She has a strong desire to be a change agent in the world of mental health and help those in the community heal and grow within themselves, one person at a time. Her hope is to assist her community as well as other communities with identifying self-care practices and knowledge to improve and manage the quality of their lives. But in a nutshell, I'm excited, I'm pumped up, and without further ado, I would like to introduce Tiana Renae to the Minority Trailblazer podcast. Welcome to the show.
Hey.
Man, I guess, as you can tell, it's a mouthful on live. It sounds good like a one-take Jake, but it's never a one-take Jake. As you probably would know.
I want you to do all my intros, actually, because there was a lot of passion behind that.
Yeah, we gotta stir it up. But there's a lot of passion in there, man. You've been working hard. We've been working hard, but you've been working hard on a lot of different things over the last couple months. And I know I wanted to have you on the show, not only to talk about your new podcast, but to really just go behind the scenes of your life and the life of a therapist. And I know there's many different practices of therapy.
Right.
So there's not one catch all, but we've never had a therapist. Oh, no, we haven't. We never had a licensed therapist on the show.
For real?
So you're the first ever. I don't believe we may have had, we had people that do coaching.
Okay. Like life coach.
Yeah, life coaching and therapy. No disrespect to my life coaches, but life coaches be trying to slide in with all this stuff, and they're like, they gonna get their water. Nah, I'm not gonna start throwing out degree names, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it's a difference, right?
There is a different level of training.
Way different level. I'll say that. I'll say it like that. Like, anybody can really, man, I seen 21-year-olds call themselves life coaches. You just graduated on an undergrad, right. And I'm like, yo, that's dangerous. But that's neither here nor there. So as we always do, we like to start the show off with a quote or mantra. So can you share with our audience a quote or a mantra that you live by, and then a story about how you apply that to your everyday life?
So let's see. My quote would be, "To whom much is given, much is required." Mm-hmm. And I say that for me because I used to very much so, and my mom would probably laugh listening to this, but be the person where, like, if the slightest thing happened, it would throw me off, and that would be it. Like, the sky is falling, the world is about to end, everything is null and void. You knew this wasn't going to work out that way, et cetera, et cetera. And so, like, just telling myself that all the time, like, this is what you asked for. So stop crying about it. Do what you got to do. Make the differences you can. Control what you can. Because that's my other thing, is trying to control everything. And that just reminds me, like, you can't control everything, but also this is what you asked for. So there's going to be more required of you.
Yeah. So tell us a story about how you really, the last time you had to be like, yo, what in the world? Like, this is I can't really control this, but this is what I asked for. You got to bring it, and live with it.
I want to say the podcast, but not in a negative way. Yeah. Like, just because we know the backstory behind it and how things happen, and just like jumping into it and saying, okay, like, how is this going to look? I've never done a podcast before. Mm-hmm. I honestly and truly do not like public speaking. Like, when I did your live event for me, it was like, okay, all right, this is going to be great. It's going to be okay. It's not going to be a problem. But the whole time my heart is beating 1,000 miles a minute. So I think, like, jumping into this and knowing that every recording was not going to be perfect. It was going to come with some hiccups. It's going to come with a bunch of information that you don't know anything about. Because for the most part, y'all led me. And all I did was record. That's all I did. Everything else is new to me. I don't know any of the information. I don't know how to move. I don't know how to submit things to it. Yeah. Which is why I hadn't done mine before. So I think I told you I started a YouTube channel that quickly died. Like, it was just like, you have to edit. And when you realize you're a one-person team and you have to do everything, and it's like, okay, maybe this isn't what I need to do right now. Like, let me just put a hold on this. And so I really just went back to social media for the most part. So I say all that to say, I think the podcast and the recording of that and everything that I could not control and had to relinquish, like, you're not in this by yourself. It's other people doing this with you. Like, you're going to have to take direction and understand that people know what they're talking about and just move forward that way. So that's what it was for me, if I could think of the most recent.
Yeah, this is as you see, even on a lighter level, man, the podcasting industry, even just the business industry, it's a disgusting place for the first 10 years. For some people,
10 years.
It's 10 years. I say 10 years just like in general, because there's so many things that are outside of your control. But then also too, from a perspective, you try to manage things. It's like, I don't know if people come to you with therapy like this, where you try to manage things from, you know how you would normally manage things, but then you're like, well, this is a business, or this is something that I'm leading. So you start to manage it in different ways. Like, what would normally be like, all right, cool, we're just going to adjust this. You start to get politics. You start to you move different. Right. It's like, nigga, no, this ain't no big corporation yet. Like, I operate like this. Right. But it is a very, cause I was talking to, Sid and Mike last week, and the crazy thing is like, yo, we just really felt that it was going to be really simple. Like, once the content, because content is it, you bang out of content 2 months. Right. And then it's like, we got in our own head trying to be deep. Like, all right, we want to do this, launch this to the right this time. Want to do this, want to do that. And then all of a sudden it's like, yo, time goes and everything, what used to be like simple.
Right.
Now you second guessing everything else. You like, hold up, what in the world? This is stuff we do. So it's and nobody thing is, once it's released, nobody ever see anything else.
None. Nobody.
And then half the time, nobody ever tell you anything else. So even like when I think about our event in January, which was a phenomenal event, man, like we had put it out in November, then somebody reneged on the contract, and then December we put it out, then it snowed.
Yep.
And it's like,
now we in January.
Yeah, we in January. And I'm like, I don't even want to start in January. But all that being said, I think at the end of the day, and I think who said this? A lot of life is about, and certain things, and we'll talk about that deeper into when we get into your segment, is about who stays the longest. On certain things. Certain things. Like
that can get messy.
Yeah, it can get really messy. But a lot of times in business though, for the most part, like I said, there's no definiteness in life in general.
Right.
But what I've seen specifically in the podcasting space, specifically in the blogging, in this space, the people that stay in the game the longest, the people that don't jump out after a year, jump out to the 2 years. And in the day, those are people a lot of times left there.
Right. More successful.
But before we even jump in, and in this podcast, the structure is going to be a little bit different. I want to go ahead and jump in to a segment I just started called Find the Pulse. So we just kind of want to see where everybody's at before we actually jump into the podcast. So what was the most memorable moment of last week, good or bad? And what did it teach you?
Oh, goodness. My weeks run so together now. Like a lot of the times I'll wake up and I'm like, what day is it? Oh, okay. It's Wednesday. So I'm trying to think last week was actually a crazy week for me. I guess this come into life for me. Cause and we talked about this for a little bit. I was like, okay, how is this going to happen? Like, what is this going to look like? And so for that to come to the light, for the logo to be finalized, for us to say, okay, we submitted it to all these different platforms. It's going to happen. This is the plan for next week. For me, was like, okay, this is all the stuff you've been praying for. Yeah. Because all the people in my circle know I've talked about having a podcast and doing things like that, but I was going to wait because I was like, maybe this isn't the time. Let me just chill out for a little bit. So to have that and know that, because I'm just still trying to think about how this happened or how I even ended up on your show in the first place. Like, because we've known each other for a long time. You've been doing this for a long time. Now, granted, I just started with what I was doing back in summer of last year.
Oh, wow. I thought you'd been at it for a little while.
And it all happened fast for me. So it's like to go from, okay, I submitted my book. I got the thing for publishing. I have it copyrighted. Okay, that's coming out. I have that. Okay, now you have the business. Now you have that. Okay, you have all these things. It happened like do. So to be where I'm at now, I'm like, a lot of stuff has manifested for you in the last year. And like, this is one of the top things that you wanted to do, to be able to talk about mental health and for it to be in a platform where people receive it. So for me, that was like, okay, you can't back up now. Yeah. We here now.
So with that being said, what is success mean to you? Like in general?
Well, one, I don't like to lose. So I would say winning in life, but that can mean so many different things. And I've grown a lot in the last year. So I feel like what my definition would have been is not my definition now.
What was it like last year?
Last year, well, I've been working on patience. Yeah. So for me, I used to expect things to happen really fast. Like, it's supposed to happen when I want it to happen. Like right now, like I shouldn't have to wait for this. Why do I have to wait? And so now to have grown to the space where things take work. Like, to whom much is given, much is required. You have to put in the work to do this. And so for me, I guess success now means, it makes me think about my first event that I had and seeing people being open and receptive to the things that your anxiety told you people were never going to listen to. And so to be in a space where I know that I've been trusted to talk about and spread knowledge and to help other people who don't have this knowledge, for me is like, that means more than money or anything. Now, granted, I want to make money. Yeah. But to be able to put knowledge out there that I know could potentially heal communities and people, that means a lot to me. So I think now that's what I would say success is. But probably last year it'd be like, oh, getting the job I want or doing the things that I want to do and the way that I want to do them. And now it's like, no, like, your passion is your purpose. And so if you can live out your purpose, then you've been successful.
What changed? Because 1 year is a long time to make that kind of change. Time. I mean, it's actually a short time to have that a complete change in mind shift about success. Like that's a big metric. So can you speak to one thing, or was it a multitude of things that changed over the last year?
It was a lot of things, and it's not just last year. I think just last year, though, I decided like, okay, that it has to be different. You can't keep carrying on the patterns and being the person that you were. Not to say that I was a bad person, but I wasn't a perfect person. Still not. But there were a lot of things for me that I had to come to terms with, especially my own toxicness. But I think the biggest thing that sparked the change for me is being by myself, which sounds weird. But for a long time, like I was a serial relationship person, like all the time. Like, oh no, Tiana, I always got a boyfriend, whatever. But then for me, it was like after my last, it was so toxic that I was just like, I just need to be in a space where I figure out where I'm at. And so for a year, like I just kept to myself. I would go out, I would enjoy myself. But for the most part, it was me in my apartment by myself, which is how I actually finished my book finally. Cause it was like, you have the time now. It's just you in this apartment. So you might as well get to growing. And so I would journal a lot and just a lot of self-reflection, therapy, of course. So I think just really committing to myself to be in a space of growth, I think is what changed. And being serious about that. Because for a long time, I'd be like, oh, I grew a little bit. But I'm still angry and I'm still the person who will snap on somebody in a second. But now it's like, let me think about that. That's probably not appropriate to say that to that person. So that's where I'm at now.
Nah, that's deep. That's deep. That's deep. That's too deep for the intro.
Right.
Good God, man.
What you asked.
Damn. All right, so let's jump right in. So, Cope for the Culture. Outside of this being on your mind, to have your own platform for a few years to kind of just share your truths on certain things. Why the name? And can you break down to our audience that is new to you what the Cope for the Culture podcast is, and then also why you chose that name?
So Cope for the Culture podcast is a podcast that was created to be able to discuss mental health specifically in Black and minority communities. We all know, at least us sitting here in this room and most people listening, that we don't discuss mental health the way that we need to. We are good for pressing on and just keep going because things will get better even when they don't, and not addressing that certain things that have happened to us either as a child or as an adult that we haven't addressed are still bothering or causing distress in our everyday life. And we just chop that up to, oh, that's just who I am. That's just my personality. Or if you're going to be around me, you have to deal with this, and just making excuses. I don't want to say excuses because that sounds bad, but making an active decision not to address the things that we need to address. So I figured, why not create a space? Because I know for me, when I've had events and I've been transparent and opened up a conversation where people were able to share, like at your event in January, I had no idea that it would have the reaction that it had. So being in that space, and just from the events I've held on my own and hearing what people are going to say or have said, it's just knowing that all they need is somebody to start the conversation. They just need to hear that one thing that says, oh, it's not just me going through this. There are other people too who are dealing with this. Mental health is not a one person thing. Like all of us are dealing with mental health, whether we have a diagnosis or not. Mental health just means wellness of your mind. And so just normalizing that for people and not carrying the stigma of crazy. Oh, you're crazy. Because if we look at the news, it'll give you every reason not to want to address your mental health. Because when it comes to school shooters or just mass murder or anything like that, it's like, oh, that person is crazy. Oh, they had mental health issues, or, oh, their upbringing was this and this and that. And so knowing that that's the narrative we have for mental health, that nobody wants to get help for that, because I'm not going to go and admit that I'm dealing with these things. So now maybe I'm going to become a serial killer. Like, nobody wants to do that. So that's why I decided to have that for the topic for the podcast. But as far as like the title, I just want to normalize that it's okay to identify that something's going on and learning how to cope with that. Like, if we can cope as a culture, if we can develop more healthy patterns as family, healthy communication, healthy relationships, better practices of how we just operate in daily life, that we can really change the narrative of what our culture has painted to be. Because we know the names, we know the stigmas that are associated with us as Black and minority communities. And so if we have the opportunity to say, it don't have to look like that. Like, we don't have to be broken. Yes, the world has given us every reason to be, but that doesn't have to be us now. And so that's where I was like, okay, well, let's cope for the culture then. So that's where that came from.
And break down a couple topics that you discussed on season 1, because I've had the opportunity to listen to a lot of episodes behind the scenes, and you touch on a lot of different topics, have a lot of different perspectives, and it's going to shed a lot of views. But can you just give our audience real quick a taste on what they can expect as far as the topics they're going to discuss just in season 1 alone?
So for season 1, I went very broad, like with the topics. Yep. And I did that with the thought of, okay, in season 2, I can break these down and go into different paths with them. But some of the things that we talked about, and the thing that's just coming up in my mind because Mother's Day this past is the Strong Black Mother episode. We all have a Black mom for the most part, if you are a Black. But just the expectations that we've put on the matriarchs of our family, the people who keep us running, and to make them feel like their only job in this world is to be a mother. It's hateful. Like, that's mean to do. And if you don't live up to that, it's like, oh, well, you're not this and you're not that, or I do my kids this way, or I parent this way, and not recognizing that parents are still people. And so we have the Strong Black Mother episode. We have an episode around the pressure to provide, because I think our brothers don't get enough credit. Like, every Black man is not a deadbeat dad. Every Black man does not deserve to be on child support, and I'm probably going to get shot for saying that. But like, just because a relationship does not work does not mean now you have the opportunity to make this person's life hell. Like, it's just not fair. And so being able to talk about that from both perspectives and the mental health that goes into that. A lot of the episodes are a little heavy, actually.
A lot, yeah. But I mean, it's why was outside, of course, we influenced a little bit of it, but why do you think in this day and age where it's easy in especially in this era we're in, to kind of do a little soft touch on the self-help thing, to dig deeper than most would do on certain topics?
Why is it helpful?
Yeah, why is it helpful? Why you choose that? Because I mean, I think you definitely talked about it on one episode where self-help, wind down Wednesdays, and a lot of things, and no disrespect to those things, but a lot of times they massage the front, but never the inside. So why did you choose to dig deeper than most in some of the stuff? Because I ain't gonna lie, some of them episodes, man, just like tears is flowing.
It get heavy. But if you think about it, and this is what I tell clients that have a hard time, like, some of the darkest, scariest, hardest moments of my life are the areas that I have grown the most. And there's no way that you can grow by addressing things on a surface level. Like, you always have to figure out what the root is. Just like a lot of people don't know that anger is a surface emotion. There's always something underneath anger. So just like that, like, you have to peel away the layers if you're going to grow. And you can't just stay in a mindset where it's like, oh, well, sometimes I do this wrong, or sometimes I address things this way, and just, okay, that's it. Not like, where did I get this communication pattern from? Who or what have I been through that now causes me to react the way that I react to people? We don't do that. We outsource everything. We like to blame other people. Oh, it's not me. I'm perfect. I know that was me for a long time, because I told you, you're a serial relationship person. Oh no, I was the good girlfriend. It was me. And then it's like, oh, your attitude was terrible. You can go off in 0 to 1 second. Like, that's not appropriate. That's not helpful. Oh, you can really shut down when you don't want to talk anymore. How does that make the other person feel on the other side? And so I think the deeper we get into topics and stop just looking at things from a surface level, the more things are going to change. And so that's why I chose, even though they are heavy and some ones you make, I apologize in advance, but there are conversations that need to be had.
So for the general listener that's going to be tuning in, what if you had to say one thing, not like a specific thing, but what do you want them to get from your show and the things that you produce?
Self-awareness, I think, is the biggest thing on my journey to self-awareness. I'm like, everybody come with me. Like, we can all do this together. But no, being self-aware and recognizing the things about yourself that could use to grow or change is what I want people to see. Like, I'm not trying to make people live the life that I live, or paint this picture that life is great and life is perfect. And if you just address your mental health, then everything will be great all the time. No, because that's not how life works. Like, things still come up. I think about when I did the episode around grief, and up until that point, I was so ready to do that episode. And then something happened where I got a phone call where it was like, oh, the dad that you don't really have a relationship with might die. And it's like, oh, well, how do I handle this? Oh, it's great. I'll just cope with this. But it's like, no, there are a lot of feelings that go with that. You really have to sit in this and recognize your truth. So I think just if people can hear something that will trigger them to think about their own life and the things they're doing and the things that have affected them and how they can begin the process of changing that. Because the show is not a substitute for therapy by any means. It's just these are the things that are going on in our culture. Let's talk about them. What does that look like for you versus what does that look like for me? And how do we start working on that? That's what I want people to get.
That's great. And do you often see at times where, say, for instance, for the people like for a long time, for a little too long that I would like to share, and not that I didn't believe in therapy, but I was like, well, I let a cost factor get between. Even when I had big bread, I was like, I was like, what? Nah, I can't. It's too much. Right. You always think it's way too much. And then, but also too, a lot of times, sometimes life can change for the better, and then that certain problem tends to go away. You think that you just cope with it better,
right?
But then when life changes, circumstances change, you realize the problem never left.
Right. You just learn how to deal with it from this era of what you're like. Think about how you change. And we've talked about this a lot. Yeah. Like 19-year-old Greg versus 24-year-old Greg to 30. Like those are going to be completely different. How you would have handled it then is going to look different now versus how you would have handled it in that middle phase. And so when I think about it, I just think being in that space.
Yeah, because the reason why I say that, even now, I thought about like the way I handled like pressure situations at 26. Then 27, 28, stuff just opened up. I was, for the most part, it was all cyclical, but stuff opened up and I was like, yo, shoot, I don't run away from pressure no more. I'm ready for the smoke. And then now I'm doing a lot better now, but still there are days where I'm like, I don't want to be, I turn my phone off. I'm like, yo, I can't deal with it. And I'm like, dog, I thought I already, that's done. I done talked to people about it. I done sat down, reflected. So is that why the push is to consistently, not only consistently with therapy, but consistently be in a perpetual state of growth? Because, can you speak to that a little bit? Because I mean, I know there's things that you probably, all right, boom, last year, anger, we on top of that. Then all of a sudden you look and then next day you snapping at somebody. You're like, what in the world?
Right. Like I was doing good until you said something to me, but it's like, no, you still struggle a little bit to deal with that. But I think the thing for me and the people in my immediate circle can tell you, and my therapist, I struggle with like things just being hypercritical of myself. That's the word I use. And so for me, it's like, oh, I've grown from this, and something to come up that'll spark and be like, nah, you still need a little tweak over here. And then it's like, see, here we go. Like it's always this, it's always that, instead of being like, growth is an ever growing, ever changing process. Just because you grow this way and this time frame does not mean 10 years down the line when things change and the similar things come up that you're not still going to have certain things around that, and recognizing that you just have to be consistent. Be consistent. Like that's the most I can say, and recognize that you're going to have hiccups. You're not ever going to be a perfect person. Like for me, the thing my therapist keeps telling me is you can be angry. Like you're allowed to be angry. It's how you handle the anger that becomes the issue. And so for me, it's like, okay, sit in this, but also manage how you talk to that person. Maybe not give that facial expression because my face gives away everything. Maybe just be quiet for a little bit and hear what that person is saying before you go off the handle because you heard that one thing that was offensive to you. So just like being mindful of, okay, once I commit myself to doing this, I have to recognize this is a lifelong process.
It's a lifelong process.
Which makes it scary for people.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I can't just change and just be changed. No. Like, it's like when you pray, for those of us who believe, but when you pray for certain things and then it presents itself as like, are you ready for this? Okay, let's see if you're ready. Let's throw this in here. Oh yeah, okay, you still responding like that a little bit, but this is what you asked for. So, okay, let's continue to grow. Because I think like for every year that I've said, this is the year that I'm going to do this. So like last year was the year of peace. When I say everything and they mama and the apocalypse and everything just started coming at me, and I was like, what is this? I said that this was going to be the year of peace. And it's like, peace is what you make it. Like, how do you navigate life with all of this other stuff going on? Because just because you ask for peace doesn't mean that the word is going to stop coming. They're going to keep coming. This year I asked for healing. Okay, cool. You want to keep going? Okay, great. Oh, you want to be patient? Okay, here you go. Here's some more stuff to test that out for you. So just it's just going to be lifelong, and you have to commit yourself to say, okay, this is what it's going to look like, and I just have to accept it.
And speaking of finding a therapist, because I know I've even after your event, there's been a variety of friends that originally after reached out, yeah, I'm gonna get a therapist, and then it's been a long journey finding the right one, and then they create other barriers about finding, oh, she need to do this, she need to do that, or I can only work with it. It's just, so what is your thoughts, or what do you tell people typically that that they're past the stage of, all right, I know I'm gonna find a therapist, but now they create a whole bunch of roadblocks. And some of these roadblocks are legit because you want to find somebody. So what do you say to those people as far as finding the right one? Is there a right one? Do you mix and match? Sometimes does it happen where you start off with one and then it don't work out? Should you try them, or should you just stay in the sideline till you find the perfect one?
I will say that I don't think that there will ever be a situation where you find the perfect therapist, as much as I think you'll find the therapist that works for you and what you need at that time. Because even when because I've been to therapy on and off, when I went to grad school, they made us like, oh, you want to be a therapist? Okay. Before you graduate, you have to do this many sessions because you have to acknowledge your own stuff before you sit on the couch and try to help somebody else. Okay, cool. I'll do that. So just doing it on and off. But I think for a while, I felt like I just had to have who they gave me and not who was my choice. So now when I went back to find therapy, I was like, okay, for me, I want a Black therapist. Everybody has the right to choose that. Like, everybody has a preference, but also someone who I feel like has the skill and has the expertise to manage what I'm dealing with, because every therapist has something that they work with. So just having that. But I also think being open, because I think a lot of people assume that when you go to therapy, the therapist is going to give you the answers, and they're not. They're going to give you the questions, and they're going to give you the information to help you find it, but they're not going to outright say, okay, look, this is what's happening. Now, sometimes it will be a situation where it's like, okay, this is what I'm seeing. Or, okay, you say that. Tell me more about that. Okay, well, a little while ago, we talked about such and such. How do you think that relates to that? So, like, just recognizing that it's not going to be a situation where you come and sit down and they're going to say, okay, Greg, this is what I see and this is what you should exactly do. It's like, no, let's figure out the root. Where did this come from? When did you start dealing with this? Oh, what's your upbringing? What were your parents like? Like, what were all these things that happened to you? Did you have any trauma in your life? Like, you're not just going to get the answers. And I think people assume like, oh, well, my therapist didn't help me because they didn't tell me what to do. They're not supposed to.
So it requires a lot of work too.
Yeah. And that's why I said self-awareness is what I want people to get, because the more self-aware you become, the more you're able to answer those questions. And that's where the therapist comes in to ask you things that you haven't considered. Like, even for me as a therapist, when I went back, the one thing my therapist asked me recently that stumped me, and I'm just sitting there looking at her like, this is the hardest question I've ever been asked in my life. And the question was only, what are the things that you can control in life? Because I told you I want to control everything. Yeah. But what are the things that you can control? So I'm like, what are those things that I can control? And like really sitting there like, okay, I need to think about this. So also recognizing that a lot of therapy happens outside of therapy. Because you only go to therapy for 1 hour a week or every other week in my case. So you have to do some work outside of that to figure out where you want to get.
So from your training, your own just thoughts, where's the fine line between, because I know one push is for people to really engage and activate a lot of their friendships to have a real conversation. But what is the line between, okay, we don't have surfacey conversation with my friends no more. We have real dialogue. If I'm going through something, I talk openly about X. Right. But then what's the line between being open with my friends and then, no, you need to you need to go to therapy? Because some may say, well, shoot, I've now developed an honest relationship with my friends. We're doing this. But is there a proverbial line? And are you one of the people that say certain friends should just be like 1 or 2 in this circle, or like what's your thoughts on that?
I'm laughing because I would be. Before I got to where I am now, I was a person where, I can just talk to my mom, or I can talk to this person or that person and I'll be fine. But a lot of the time, why it's more helpful to go talk to a therapist is because they don't know you. If you're going and seeking advice from people who know you, they know your quirks, they know how you react to situations, they know how you were 5, 6, 7 years ago, they know what you said to this person, like they know everything about you. So it's going to be very hard for them to give you unbiased advice or to help you through a situation where they may already have their understanding of you and, oh, you probably handled it this way because of X, Y, and Z, where it's like, no, I don't need that. I need to figure out why, like for real.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think having a combination of having a village and having people that you can go to, but also recognizing that your village cannot solve all your problems and it's not their job to. We're all dealing with our own individual stuff. Yes, it's okay to gather support and have that, but you can't expect them to manage and run your life and help you out with everything because they can't.
Mm-hmm.
We all have our own things going on. And so I know now, at least for my people in my friend group, and I keep saying this because I hope other people will too, and I've seen it, which is why I started doing it, is asking people what they can handle that day. Because you may ask me something, but somebody may have died today and I can't really help you because I'm not even in the mind space to help myself. And if you ask, then you'll know that, versus just assuming that, okay, this is my person. Whatever I have to throw at them, they're ready, regardless of what's happening. And just having the entitlement, I guess is what I'll say. We are a society of entitlement and we deserve and we have this. So I'm going through this, so you should listen. No, I don't have to if I can't handle that today. Like I'm struggling in my own area. So let me get back to you tomorrow because I can't do this today. So I think it's just a combination of both. Like you can share, but also you might need somebody else to help you through that.
So with that being said, let's actually take a step back and let's jump into a little bit about yourself. Like, what was your childhood like, and where you're from?
So I am originally, well, let's say, born in Rhode Island. A lot of people don't know that. I used to hate telling people that. I don't know why. It used to bother me. Like, oh, where you from? Oh, I'm from such and such. I would hate it, but it's probably because I don't know anything about it. Like I was there until I was 2, and then we moved to Virginia Beach. And I was in Virginia Beach until the 10th grade. And then I moved to Durham. But as far as like childhood, single parent home, single mom, saw my dad here and there, didn't really have a relationship with him. So of course, daddy issues with that. But I think given the circumstances and being in a home where I had a single parent and she was doing everything that she could do, which is a lot of reason why I did the Strong Black Mother episode, because I've seen it firsthand. But I think I had a pretty good upbringing considering those things. Like my mom always made sure we had something to do. We were involved in activities. I played the violin up until the 8th grade. A lot of people don't know that. I danced all the way up until college. My minor for a long time was dance, and then I dropped that. Yeah. So I'm trying to think. And my mom always gets mad. She's like, you never remember the happy stuff from your childhood. You only remember the negative stuff. Like she'll ask me stuff. I'm like, I don't remember that. Oh, but I remember that car accident though. Or I remember when we were in the car and this happened. Or I remember that day. And she's like, why don't you, like, I broke my back for y'all. Why you don't remember this stuff? And I'm just like, so it's kind of how trauma works sometimes. Is that that's all I can remember? So I'm sorry. So yeah, I mean, that was my upbringing.
So what was there anything as far as, because you know your mentality in middle school, high school, and early adulthood, because I don't know, is there scientific data about when we really become our true beings in a sense? Because the question I wanted to ask was, what do you think shaped you the most during your earlier years of life? I guess earlier years, I'm talking about early up to like 25. Like, what was it a situation or was it a mindset? If you had to put a name on it or put something on it, what do you think shaped you the most?
Now you're making me feel how I told you my therapist made me feel. Let's see.
I know your mom listening like, dang, I just asked for the happy moments and now
you want to bring back.
She about to go to something.
Oh, what shaped me? Let's see. I mean, you get raised different when you're raised by a single mom because they see the world different. Like, you have to survive. You have to make it. You can't rely on anybody. Like my mom is the most, you need something, she got you. You need to research something, she know this. Oh, you need a resource? Okay, we can just figure it out. Like that's how she's always been. So that's how she tried to like navigate me. But I was also always a very emotional, anxious kid. Like I worried about everything. Like the worst thing that's going to happen is going to happen today. And it's going to be only me that it happens to. And my mom was like, Tiana, like the sky is not falling. It's going to be okay. This is how we're going to manage that. So even now when I'm dealing with something, I call it like, okay, Ma, this is what's happening. Like, what do I do? Okay, do X, Y, and Z. So I think she definitely had like a huge impact on that and just making sure I knew everything. Like she made me change an oil with her one time because you may not have a man to do it for you. So you're going to figure this out now.
Your mom was out here changing oil?
Changing oil. Wow. Oh, you want to know how to fix a tire? Okay, let's fix this tire. Let's do, like, she was that person. You want to apply for financial aid? Okay, I'll help you, but then you're going to have to learn how to do it by yourself. Oh, you want a job? No, I can't call the job for you. You have to call, and this is what you say. So her always doing that. But I think, too, for a long time, I was so angry about my dad not being involved that it was like, oh, no, I have to be successful. Like, this is who I'm going to be because I'm going to prove that I didn't need you to do any of these things. And, oh, look here, I didn't need you. So I think the combination of those two and navigating that is probably what shaped me a lot. Because it's even like to this, I remember around the first time, because it was a long time that I did not talk to him. I mean, even as a kid, it was like literally every 2 years he was in and out. I remember the first time I met him outside of being a toddler was at a basketball game. Like, he just showed up and I'm like, I was like, do you know who this person is? I'm like, yeah, that's my dad.
Uh-huh.
And so, like, the abandonment of always, like, oh, you're here one day and the next day you're not. And okay, now there's a whole period of time where I don't talk to you. And so I think when I got to college, it was right around one of the times, definitely college, because MySpace was still a thing.
Yeah.
He would send me messages, and I remember, like,
he was on MySpace?
Yes. One of the messages, like, that he would send me, and I feel so anxious talking about this because I'm like, dang, when people hear this stuff and I'm talking, but it's also my story too, so I'm gonna talk about it. But he would say things like, I like what he did as a father or who he was as a father. And I'm like, what? No, I did this. Like, or no, my mom helped me. Well, your mom. And so it was just always like navigating that ridiculous triangle that put me in a place where it's like, I have to be successful no matter what. Like, I have to break generational curses because this is not going to be the situation for my family. Like, I'm very strict on that now. Like, no, my kids are going to be raised in a 2-parent home. It's going to be functional. We're going to be happy. Like, I'm not going to beat my kids. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. Because, like, my mindset is so, it has to be different for them. Like, we don't have to raise broken families. It does not have to be that way. And so coming from one and seeing what it looks like and the pain that goes into that for everybody, from my mom to my dad, because even with him, I'm recognizing now within my growth that he's still a person too. And he still had to navigate his own life and his own abandonment and what that looked like for him. So now he in turn became that same person. And so now I have to navigate that. But for me, it's like, okay, no, it's going to be different. So having all those different things for me is like, this is what my life is going to look like. And this is what I would like it to look like, because this is what you went through. And this is not what you want for the future generation.
Nah, that's, hey, can't say any better. So, which college you go to again?
So I went to UNCG for undergrad and then A&T for grad.
So what led you into becoming a therapist? Like, did you grow up saying, because I know you were in dance and you were a firecracker of sorts in high school. But what even led you to therapy? Like, what led you down that direction?
So, up until my sophomore year of college, I wanted to be a pediatrician and was on the track to do so. And then I got to things like organic chem and
that stopped the ball
stuff
right there.
Where it's like, oh, this requires math, and I'm not all that great in math, or I struggle with this. And so having a conversation with my advisor, I will never forget this. And she was just like, so medical school is very competitive. And your grades, I mean, they're nice, but they're not competitive. So is this what you want to do? And I'm like, is this what I want to do? This is what I told my family. Like, everybody's banking on me becoming a doctor. No, this is definitely what I'm going to do. And so then I was like, well, she's like, well, if it is, then you have to do this, this, and this before you graduate. And I was like, that sounds impossible, because I have already failed chemistry at this point, and I don't know what else to do. So I talked to her about like what the different options were. And she asked me what was a class that I took that I really like. And it was a human development class that I took. So she was like, okay, well, what did you like about it? And I told her like just the aspect of knowing how things work, how people develop, different things with relationships, stuff like that. And she said, okay, well, you know, you can major in that. So I majored in human development and family studies. So before I had to switch advisors, of course, because I switched that. So when I got my new advisor, I said, okay, if I do this, what can I do? And so he gave me all these different options, and therapy came up at one point, but I still wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm gonna definitely do therapy. It was like, well, I'm gonna help children in some way. I don't know what that's gonna look like, but this is what I'm gonna do. So by the time I graduated, I was like, I've been in school way too long. So I'm going to take a break. So I took a semester off. And actually my line sister, which is funny, she told me about the program because she applied to it. And I was like, that don't sound bad. Let me look more into that because I've already done internships outside of the major that I had before. When I would go home during the summer, I was working in the field because one of my aunts owned a group home. My mom was a manager at a group home. So I already had that lens since high school. Like I knew what it looked like. So I started doing contract work for that. And I was like, well, I kind of like this. So let me see. So I decided to major in it. And then it was like, okay, yeah, no, I can definitely do this because if I can help other people change what I saw for myself and for my brother and for other kids who probably could have had a different opportunity. If I can be the person to help at least plant that seed so it'll look different for them, I'll do that. Cause I used to believe, and I'm back and forth with it most days, that it's easier to help grow and change a child because of where they are developmentally than it is an adult. Cause your brain stops developing at 25. Like it's fully developed at 25. So you have up until that time to kind of try to figure it out. Whereas, you know, as adults, we're stuck in our way. Oh, this is how I always been. I ain't changing. Everybody loves me the way I am. No, it's not functional. It's not helpful. So just having that mindset and saying, okay, I always wanted to help children, but I can help them in a different way. It doesn't have to be through medicine. So that's when I went to therapy.
So now you've been a licensed therapist for how long now?
So I got my license in November of 2014 because you have to get an associate license until you get, in total, it's like 3,000 hours, and they break it down in between direct and indirect hours, which essentially just means you sat in front of a person versus making calls and doing
3,000 hours.
Yeah.
Is that real?
Yeah. Like
3,000.
So average, it can take you around 2 years, but it can take you more. And then I got my full license 2 years. Is it 2 years ago? Yeah, because my license is expiring next month. So I've had my full license since December of 2017.
So what did they teach you? Like, not what did they teach you? That's that's not the question.
What did they teach you?
What are a few things that you know now that you never would have thought that would have been like involved with therapy, this whole journey, et cetera? Because every career has, I want to be a professional speaker. Then you realize like you may spend first 2 years speaking for free and I want to be a podcaster. And then first year you're in this network, they're just funning around. They just figuring stuff out. Like there's a lot of different things. So what is something that in your journey as a therapist, now it's like, whoa, I didn't know this was a part of this even job that they did not tell you about?
It's many things, but I think the biggest thing recently that has like been mind blowing, I want to say another word, but I'm not going to say it. Mind blowing for me is somebody else's problem or struggle or situation, if you hear it long enough, can trigger some things of your own. And I find myself a lot, and I think it's because I'm doing more trauma work now. So a lot of the stuff is real deep, or a lot of the stuff is like, oh, this happened to me as a kid and forgot about it. And it's like, oh, wait, this sounds familiar. Okay, now I have to deal with this because you're making me remember my own stuff, but I'm trying to help you. So I think the biggest thing is being a therapist does not make me exempt to being human, which is a misconception too. Because one of my biggest pet peeves is for somebody to look at me and say, but you're supposed to be a therapist. And what does that mean? Like, yes, I help people every day, but it's a different thing to help somebody else than to sit in your own truth. Completely different things. So being in the position I am now, I've had to hear a lot of things that I didn't realize would have such an effect on me. Like I'm hearing kids talk about, which it bothers me, but I didn't think it would be a situation where sometimes I go home and it's like, dang, and I think about it and I'm crying for a kid that this is not my kid, but I've worked with you long enough where it's like your pain has come my pain a little bit because I feel for you. And I'm a huge empath anyway. So I really pick up on other people's feelings and their emotions and how things affect them. So I've really had to be conscious about you can give too much of yourself and now you have to deal with all of that because your emotional container is over full now. And now you don't even have anything left for yourself. So now you're going home every night, you're crying because you listen to all this stuff all day, but you still have to deal with your own stuff.
And they teach you stuff in school to deal with it, but how is it really applying? They don't.
So I've been talking a lot to people in the field about this recently. They touch on like vicarious trauma, which just means somebody else's trauma becomes your, like you take on the feelings and the pain of somebody else's trauma, or compassion fatigue, where you just care so much about at least the client or what they're going through that it starts to weigh on you heavily. Like you're just too compassionate. They tell us all those things, but they don't say how, like, I don't think anybody said, okay, some days it may look like this. Mm-hmm. Some days you may cry. Some days you may feel angry. Some days you may not want to see this person. Some days this person, like, they don't tell you all. It's like, okay, we touched on it, moving on. Mm-hmm. It's like, but no. Like, even in me being trained as a trauma therapist, I asked at one of our like in-person trainings, okay, what do we do when we're starting to experience secondary trauma? And now I'm traumatized as if it's my own, and I never went through that. Oh, well, you practice self-care, you do this. And it's like, right, but what does that look like? Like, who helps the therapist deal with this stuff? So now as a therapist, you have to find your own therapist, but one who knows how to deal with a therapist, because every therapist doesn't know how to do that.
So it gets mad complex.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I can only imagine, because also when you first started, did you I know they probably tell y'all against it, but in your head, hold yourself. I mean, because when you're constantly not even getting advice, but you're giving other people questions and other things, specifically if you're dealing with children. How hard is it when you make a wrong, especially if you're already super critical of yourself, now you make a wrong decision, you're like, hold up. I just counseled somebody yesterday about maybe the dangers of drugs or this, or dangers of listening to blah, blah, blah. Right. And all of a sudden so how do you kind of slice it, or be?
It depends on the day, to be honest. Yeah. Some days it's like, okay, Tiana, you're still human. These things are still going to come up. And other days it's like, you know better. You talk about this every day. You tell people how to control their own mindset. You know you have power over your thoughts, but here you are thinking this stuff, or, oh, you're really angry and you're sitting in this anger a little too long. You talk to somebody about this. So for me, it's like, okay, be compassionate to yourself, because you're going to drive yourself crazy. And I think that's where I am now, is I'm overgrowing. And it's just like, it takes time. Like, nothing is going to happen overnight. It takes time. Just chill. It's going to be okay. Yes, you're helping people, but that doesn't change the fact that you still have to help yourself, and somebody else has to help you through that. It's tough.
So that's why we all, really, as humans, that's why we all in it together, to be honest. We all play a major role. Because then there's some people that lack empathy. They just forget everything. Yes. And then there's people that over empathize. Then people that it's just a constant battle.
Push and pull. Yeah.
So now, and I know you talk about it in depth on the podcast, and all my listeners, they're nuanced enough to know it, but I would be reminiscent if I didn't. I'll probably use that word wrong, but if I didn't mention it. But now with the onboard of social media, do they train people for? Because I mean, now it's still kind of early, so the research on social media is probably still a little bit not naive, but like short on it. But how in this age where you have people deal with a lot, is the problems triggered by social media? Are these fundamental problems that always existed already and it's bigger? Or is this a whole new phenomenon that people in the mental health space and stuff have to attack and find different ways to go with it, as far as comparison, as far as jealousy, as far as always constantly yourself? It's just, I don't know.
Social media enhanced everything. Like, we know history constantly repeats itself, but now we have to think about it repeating itself, and now we have it broadcasted everywhere. Whereas before, you couldn't find certain things, or if you talked about certain things to certain people, you didn't have to worry about it being posted for the world to see. Like, that's new, and that makes everything a different ballgame. Because when you consider things like cyberbullying, or the fact that we decide, and I was just having this conversation yesterday, just because somebody posts something or does something does not give us the entitlement to be judge and jury for people. And that's what we have assumed as a society. And that's why things are just, excuse my language, gone to shit.
It's getting out of control.
It's getting out of control, because people people laugh at me, and I don't care. I report people now because y'all need to cut it out. Stop talking about people. And if I have to report you too much, I just don't need to follow you anymore because I don't need to see this. And you're obviously not going to change. So let me just get out of here. Mm-hmm. But I definitely think technology has made everything 1,000 times worse than what it was. We just weren't seeing these things. They were around, just like sexual assault and rape is not new. It's been happening forever. But now we have cameras to record it. Or now we have more information where people are coming out about it or people are posting stuff on the internet that it's not new. We're just talking about it more now. Mm-hmm. So I think just having more access and more knowledge or lack of knowledge to things now just makes the world, I don't want to use the word crazy. I'm trying really hard not to use that. Chaotic. That's a better word.
Yeah. Because I mean, even myself, it's hard to. It's very you have to be because I mean, I don't really have social media on my. After I post something, I just get off, and sometimes it hurts because you're not engaging with some people as I used to. But I was just sometimes I'm not even mature enough myself to not go in and not judge. Like I mean, it could be a great post, but I'm thinking so deep. Like I'm getting meta. I know this dude. Why would he do this? Right. Oh, bro, he's feeding the homeless. Why is he posting pictures of feeding the homeless? What he not even from that city? Right. Like what in the world? I know, dude. The dude ain't really real. It's like he ain't a real dude. Like what? Why? Gee, like you become every time I get on social media, I always become what I hate to a certain extent,
and we all do.
It's so weird.
Because even for me, like I have to catch myself if I'm about to, because people, like if you posted it and you wanted people to be entertained by this, okay. But if somebody posted this not on your behalf and is using this to villainize or bully or demonize you, that's something completely different. But I even have to check myself. Like if people send me stuff and I'm like, none of my business. Right. They okay. It's none of my business. Sorry. Like I don't want to, I'm not going.
And the power it has to create narratives, like even, and this is the hot topic, or not even a hot topic no more, because topics don't last that long no more.
You know they don't.
So even like with the Aisha Curry situation, like her comments on a panel amongst peers got taken.
That pissed me off.
To a whole.
That pissed me off so bad because when I finally got a chance to listen to it, I'm like, y'all bullied this girl for that? For that, like it wasn't even. I get both sides and I get what people are saying, but at the end of the day, we are all human and we all seek attention in some shape or form. Just because you don't seek attention like I do does not make me any worse or better than you. Mm-hmm. But we love to look at somebody else and be like, when you know goodness well that you just put on such and such outfit for this person or you did this because you wanted this. We can't act like we're exempt from other people, but because she was the one who decided to be vulnerable and say, okay, this is what I'm dealing with, then we decided, it's our job to make all these memes about you and make you feel even worse about the thing that you already feel bad about.
So the thing is, and then it's the wise old question, and we'll jump after this to something else, but where do you think we go from here, though? Because the social media is not going anywhere. It's getting more advanced, getting nuanced. Right. How can there's probably a huge lane into this where how can you even get in the office sometimes, because then you feel like you're elite. Like, social media doesn't even bother me. I don't even have social media.
I'm just great.
Yeah, like, I just mentioned, I don't even do social media anymore. Like, I just, when I post, like, who are you?
All the peasantry, the rest of you guys.
Yeah, it's like, so is it really just, is it just continuing self-awareness?
Mm-hmm. I think it's just checking yourself because you can't change anything about anybody. And that's what I said. Like, if I'm reporting you too much, I just need to get out of your lane. Like, I don't need to follow your page. If this is what you want to post, great. That's your prerogative. But I don't have to sit here and watch it and take my time to report each individual post or story. Not my job. You got it. Continue. But even for me, I think just limiting your time on social media, and you can control what pages you follow. I don't follow the Shade Room. Mm-hmm. I don't follow any gossip blogs, any of that. None of it. Like, I don't want the information. Because why is it my business who got a divorce or who's in a domestic violence situation or who lost their money or who's already dealing with all this stuff and now the world gets to talk about it too? That's not my place. So I don't even want to be involved in it. I may see something here and there if people send me stuff or if people post it on their stories, but I don't have to see it firsthand. and I can decide whether or not I look at that. So I think just deciding what you want to allow into your space, your energy, setting boundaries. I finally started using screen time on my iPhone. For those of you who have iPhone, so my phone say, okay, you use your time for the day. All right, time to get off. Or sometimes I hit that remind me in 15 minutes. I'll come back on. But other than that, you just really have to be conscious of it for yourself because you can't change the world.
So we mentioned earlier in the show, and this is the next segment now. We mentioned earlier in the show that over the last couple of years, a lot of things that come rapidly. A lot of things you wish for, i.e. the podcast, but also too, even before the podcast, last year, you started your own business. Can you share with our audience, and your business name is Healthy Pleasures? And I remember the first time you said it, I was like, what is this?
She's
it's like
selling sex toys. Yeah, no, I'm not. So one, it actually started out as a blog. When I was in grad school, I was working out real heavy. I was real in a healthy mindset. At least I thought I was. Around that time too, I had got into a really bad car accident, which people know about it, but they don't know about the level of functioning it took from me. Which goes back to a question you asked me earlier about how do you decide what affects you and what doesn't in therapy. This is a situation where I had to say, I can't take this case because this is too familiar for me. I got to step out. But yeah, so I was in a car accident in 2013. I think it was right before I graduated. But I got a concussion, hit the dashboard. That's why I have this Harry Potter scar on my nose, because my face bust open on the dashboard. Sorry to give detail to people.
I never seen it. Maybe
it's gotten lighter now, but for a while it was bad. But the concussion, which this is why it's important for people to have knowledge and for us to spread awareness around mental health. But it got so bad they had to put me on anxiety meds because I was freaking out all the time. I had to go home from grad school. I had to take a semester off from grad school, go home because I wasn't allowed to drive. I wasn't allowed to be by myself. I couldn't talk so much so that I would stutter. Like you would think I was born with a stutter. And I would think I was saying one thing, but people would be looking at me like, what are you talking about? I was making note like gibberish. I was not saying anything. So then I would just start crying because it's like, nobody's understanding what I'm saying. So that's that. But then I started the blog around that time, did all that stuff, was trying to get back into the right space, stopped the blog, of course, because then life was fine and better. And I'm great and I'm in great shape. I'm eating well. Okay, cool. I'll stop this for a little bit. So then I just stopped altogether, and that was Healthy Pleasures. And then it popped up on a memory because, of course, social media reminds us of everything now.
9 years ago. And
do you remember?
It's the worst when you're not going through a rough time.
Right.
You see yourself smile like, what? Man, get that out of here,
I asked you for this memory. That's why I took Time Hop off my phone.
Yeah.
Because it reminded you of pictures and stuff that you forgot you put up there, and now you're upset. But anyway, so it popped up as a memory, and I was like, maybe I should restart this page again. So I did. But also around that time, I was at a job. I was burnt out. I was tired of doing therapy. I was in a position of leadership at that time. So I was dealing with a lot from a lot of different people, because here I am as a young Black female. Majority of my team, of the people that I'm supervising, are older than me. So that was an issue. And I had a lot of issues with that, down to being in a situation where I also thought somebody was going to kill me. They used to work for me, which sounds crazy, but yeah, it was that kind of situation. So I was like, I'm ready to go. Like, this is not the place for me. I got to get out of here. There was some stuff that I cannot talk about because it's illegal right now. And I signed contracts and said that I wouldn't, but that kind of situation.
A lot of stuff.
Person that I thought was going to kill me. But anyway, so it's like, I got to figure out something different. I always said I wanted to do private practice anyway. So let me go ahead and jump out. So I actually did the stuff in Raleigh, applied for private practice, was starting on the application through the licensing board so I can get all that stuff done. And I went to an event that one of my friends was hosting, and it was just a group of women that were all entrepreneurs, or all like just doing their own thing. And so I think that was right around the time where I was either releasing my book or I had started announcing that it was coming out. And so just talking to the different women and just being in that atmosphere, I was like, maybe I won't do private practice right now. Maybe I'll just do the stuff with Healthy Pleasures and make this a real thing. And it won't just be about working out this time. This time we're going to throw in mental health and just stuff around that too. Like, we're just going to make it whole mind, body, and soul. Let's do that. I was like, okay, talk to people about it. Yeah, that sounds good. cool. So I took that application out and submitted the one for Healthy Pleasures. And then got approval for all that. And I was like, okay, I'll go the nonprofit route. So I'm waiting to hear back from approval around that. But then things just started happening and just started going. And just to clarify, it's Healthy Pleasures because I want it to be just like for mental health, just normalizing that it can be pleasurable to be in a good space or to feel good or to heal or to do work on yourself. Like it doesn't have to be something that we're scared of and like, oh, no, I'm not doing this. Like, no, you can enjoy growing and you can enjoy becoming who you want to become or looking the way that you want to look or feel or changing different patterns about yourself. It does not have to be this huge, ugly elephant in the room.
So what's your definition of a good space? Because I think about it all the time. Because like every day I check in and some days I'm like, am I in a good space? Or sometimes I think I need to imagine like all your sins, all the things you think you did wrong, get past. You have to clear out every single thing before you get in a good space, and you clear out 7, but you're like, well, I still haven't talked to that person and I don't know what's going on. Like, what do you label now, knowing what you know now, as a good space for you mentally?
I really think it just depends on the person, to be honest, because even saying like you have to check all these things off, if you think you're going to check everything off and in life and it's just going to be that, you're never going to be in a good space and you're still going to be in heaven, hell, wherever you go, sitting like, dang, if I could have just done X, Y, and Z, I would have been in a good space. So the biggest thing for me, because I've tried to practice more of like mindfulness and meditation and just being present within myself. So I think being in a good space is just being present. Like if you feel how you feel, that's okay. But what are you going to do about how you feel? How are we going to get to a better place where things may still be happening, but you can cope with it? It's not throwing you off. You're not becoming a recluse and never talking to people for 7-8 months. Like things are still going to come up, but how are you managing that? What does that look like? What is your support system like? Are they supporting you, or are they those friends that are sneak dissing and like, oh, they're just joking? Nah. What does that look like for you? So I think for me, getting in a good space was starting to change my mindset, starting to recognize that you're not this perfect person and girlfriend and friend and sister and daughter. You're not. There are some things that you bring to the table that are toxic for other people, just like they bring that for you. Okay, I know that now. So now I'm working on it. So now I'm in a better place for that. I'm not perfect, but now I'm in a better place and I'm working on it and I'm conscious of it. So I think just recognizing, or the days where you fall short and it's like, did I beat myself up for this? Or did I say, dang, okay, mental note, let me not do that the next time. Because I think that's the other thing too that we were talking about earlier. Like, oh no, I'm growing. So I'm grown. This is it. I don't need to do anything else to grow. I'm in that space. Like, no, things are still going to come to make sure that you develop what you said you were developing. That's just how life works. Can't say you have a skill and you never put it to practice.
Yeah. No,
then you're not skilled.
Nah, that's real. That's real. And I know there's so many more questions and things you could talk into that, but luckily you got your own podcast now.
Do.
So they'll for the first season, I know it's high level, but it's still so many different crevices and different things to discuss. So Code for the Culture, check that out to be able to really hear from her own perspective without me butting in and giving my own thing from a lot of different angles, a variety of different tools, especially because there's other people that you interview that live certain things, as far as even I'm talking about the incarceration podcast, which is freaking
phenomenal.
Yes.
When I picked, so I was selective about the people that I chose because it's like, I feel like they would be good for this. But every single guest that I had surprised me because we are not a culture of transparency. And some of the things that people have gotten and you've listened and shared, I'm like, okay, now we're going a different route with this conversation and I'm cool with it. You took it there. So let's go. But it's just like, there are people out here who are willing to talk about it and who are willing to be the testimony for other people to say, yeah, I dealt with this, but things are different for me now. Like I think about the entrepreneurship episode and just the path for him and what that looked like. And the adoption one, I think that's probably been one of the heaviest ones I've listened to where I was like, oh, that was deep. Okay, we getting into it. Like this is really what people need to hear, and this will probably resonate with a lot of people. Like that's a forgetting population. They need to know that this is what's happening. But it really did surprise me to have people, and it made me happy because it's like, it's not just me talking about it and pushing it. Yes, I created the conversation, but the guests, for the most part, they made the show.
Yeah, as always, man. So, last two questions before we go into the culture change rapid fire round. What advice would you give now to the 21-year-old version of yourself?
Man, 21, I was still a hothead. What would I tell myself? Choose you first. I think that's probably what I would tell myself. Because I'm thinking 21, I was still like trying to prove who I was. And I don't know. Yeah, I was in a weird space at 21. I had I think I graduated. Yeah, 2011. So I was 21 when I graduated from college. So I'm just becoming an adult, trying to figure that out. Oh, now I'm adulting. That's fun. But I think that would be the biggest thing that I would tell myself, and also to be patient with myself and not let other people dictate who I am or what I'm supposed to be. Because with improving myself, like I did a lot of alterations to modify myself or to fit in where I was at or who I was with at the moment. And that just created a whole person that I didn't even know. So I would probably tell myself that. Just slow down, girl.
I could tell myself that now.
Right.
It's like, hold up, that's tried and true. Because even with the whole, and that's the weird thing about even in business and entrepreneurship is that it comes a point where, regardless of an age, where if you do it for a long period of time, you become to associate yourself with that. But then what happens if there's a space where, well, shoot, you don't want to do that no more, and then maybe that's okay. But then now, you may never go, you may spend 10 years or 5 years wrestling with that and then creating toxic in every other space of your life because you don't see yourself working with somebody because you told yourself, oh, you can't listen to nobody. Oh, you can't listen to somebody. But you've in it, and that could be your help valve. Yeah. But there's a lot of, so entrepreneurship, and hopefully I know going forward, there'll be some more, especially season 2. And we definitely gonna set some stuff up with some workplace, because there's a lot of workplace meta stuff that people have to deal with. That is,
and we kill ourselves for a job.
Yeah. And then when you get in the job, dealing with the emotional magnitude of certain conversations, dealing with people, it's a lot.
It is a lot. It absolutely is, and how to manage that. Because, like I said, we'll kill ourselves for a job because we have to survive, and this is how I pay for things. But if you lose it and come to work and just go off, they'll find somebody else tomorrow. But now you're here depressed, anxious, worried about how you're going to pay your next bill. Now you may be suicidal. Like, there are so many things that go. Cause I told you, I had somebody who worked for me that I knew in my heart that he was going to try to kill me. Like, that's no place to want to work. It's time to get out of there. So yeah, I agree. There are a lot of stuff in the workplace that we take or allow ourselves to take because that's our livelihood.
What's your lasting legacy? I mean, not what's your what do you want your lasting legacy to be? Good God, that's so weird.
Right, like today is the day. What do you want your last legacy to be? On the podcast. I hope y'all like the episode because this is it for her. What do I want my last legacy to be? Man, this is like a hard thing to put on myself, but I'm dead set on breaking generational curses and generational trauma. Like, I'm not saying that the family that I create or the village that I create is going to end all things, but I at least want it to be the start so that the next generation won't have to see what I saw. No, so I think that's the thing for me, which also puts a lot of pressure on me because it's like, oh, you were the first one in the family to do this, or you were the first one to do that. And it's like, wow, now I got to keep going because this is what y'all want me to do. But also I know that's what's needed. So I want to break generational curses. I want to normalize mental health one person at a time and start doing things different.
Well, that wraps that up. So our last round, our culture change round, I asked a series of 5 rapid fire questions, and hopefully we get rapid fire answers. You ready to rock?
Ooh, okay.
What's the best piece of advice that you have never received?
Never received? I'm gonna say, as a kid or just growing up, how to deal with and manage emotions and not to be afraid of them, because I think a lot of the times we are taught not to deal with it and just to keep pressing versus it's okay to be upset. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be this. Like, if you're anxious, that's okay. But how do you manage it? So like having more direction around just how to be a human. Like, we got all the basic life stuff, how to survive, how to do that. But how do I survive being a human? Like, that's the advice I would have loved to give. No shade to you, Ma, but that's how do I navigate life? When I feel and think and have all these, maybe sometimes I have a suicidal thought and I don't know where that came from. Like, how do I deal with that? What does that look like? Go to therapy.
Question though, I forgot to ask this. This is not a part of the rapid fire. I know you mentioned meditation. Are you a big proponent of people meditating in some aspect, or is it more so the psychology behind meditation you're proponent of, as far as being aware and things of that nature?
I definitely think for me it's being aware and just sitting. A lot of times I'll use it at work. Like, if I'm just feeling really worked up, or if I had a session where it's like, that was a lot for me, so I just need a minute to get back right. Or if I'm about to do something, like I meditated a little bit before this, because even though I've recorded 100 episodes, not 100, but I was still anxious about doing this. So like, okay, you're anxious, but this is why you're anxious. Like, this is a good opportunity. Okay, so let's think about that. Let's be present in how that feels and not what you're afraid of. So I think for me, it's more so like just not running from, because I'm always in my head, like always. My mind goes 1,000 miles a minute. So just trying to slow that down.
That's different. I never thought about it, and being present in a particular feeling.
Yeah.
So not being present, like you can be present in the feeling of, whoa, after this episode, I think it's going to be a great episode. Let me be present in this is a great episode, rather than be a present in I'm anxious if this goes wrong, or if this doesn't get out right, or if I was like, I feel you. Wow.
Because we're conditioned to be fearful and not grateful.
Why is that, you think? That's probably a God thing?
I don't know. As much as it's like our life experiences shape how we view the world. So based off what my experience is how my brain is wired versus yours. Because a lot of people don't know that when you experience trauma or anything that was like super scary or life changing for you, the structure of your brain changes so that you now know how to deal with life from being traumatized. It's crazy, right?
Yeah, that is crazy. I mean, because quite frankly, I was thinking of that earlier today, but even last week, where I've always felt that. And you read my book back, and there was a day where I was suicidal for a while, and I called my mom, and she had picked me up. But I realized that every time I really feel like I get close to a real business breakthrough, like a breakthrough, I believe it's a breakthrough, and that's different. People, oh, you already broke through? Nah, I feel like we ain't
got to the top yet.
Yeah, there's still some other stuff, but a part of me always feels like. And we're working through it, but it feels like you'll never get past the hump.
Yeah.
Like I've always in my life got to and we never passed. And it's like that being in that apartment all those months, that fundamentally shaped me like that.
Yeah.
It's 8 years ago. But to this day, it's like, we still have yet to get past that mountaintop. Cause you've always think that it's going to fall back. And it's like, hold up, everything else could be going your way. But then one thing, and then all of a sudden now you automatically go into a different mode. So it is crazy how it really, but luckily there are methods where you can cope with it.
Yeah,
correct?
you cope with it. You address it. And that's the key that we all miss is we keep going. Like I'm even thinking about when I got in my accident, as scary as that was for me, because it was rough for like months. I didn't get therapy for that. And it's like, that changed your life. Like you thought you were going to die that night. Like you could not talk. You could not walk. You couldn't do anything by yourself. You were not allowed to drive. That's life altering. Like you essentially were a toddler for 3 months. But I never went. And that's the thing for most of us is, oh, that was just that. But I'm good now. I've healed. I got a little scar or whatever. But, you know, life goes on. It's cool. And we don't sit and say, dang, now every time you get in the car, you're afraid that you're going to die. Because that was it for me a long time, too. Because now I've been conditioned to when you get in the car, accidents happen. Because I've been in several serious accidents and you might die. Like one day that's going to happen and you're going to die. So I think just acknowledging that and recognizing that when we go through things in life, we have to address them. We cannot ignore them. Avoidance makes everything worse because then it's just in your head all the time. Now you're having nightmares. Now you're thinking about it. Now you're thinking about it when you don't want to think about it. Now you're being triggered by things that you don't even understand about why you're being triggered. But then we chop it up to personality. Oh, that's just how I am. No, something happened. And now this is how you operate. How do we fix that? Or how do we change it so that you can function better?
So really, technically, a lot of people really could be, they could really, their current self right now, somebody that's listening, that could not really, a lot of them, that's not who they really are. A lot of us just walk around on a day-to-day basis. I wouldn't put a percentage on it, but I mean, if we looked at who we really are, we're so far from it because we live with all these scars that have never been healed. And it's like no amount of fitness, eating right,
you can have the bangingest body and mind gone. Like gone. Think about the people who are famous. You wanted fame. You wanted to be the top person. Dang, you overdose. Like, why were you even using something that hard that would cause you to overdose? That's how you were coping. Like, and that's no judgment to anybody, but we get all of these unhealthy coping mechanisms and just chop it up to, well, that's just how I handle it. Oh, they're just quiet. They don't like to talk about how they feel because they're up here in their head and they're trying to figure it out. You're not going to figure it out up there by yourself, especially if you're having suicidal thoughts, because that's going to try to drain out everything else that you're trying to get through. Like, none of us are exempt from anything. And we all think that would never happen to me. Oh, I'm good. What? Trauma? No, that don't exist in my world. I'm strong. Like,
yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot with that. If you could add one habit and take away one habit, what would they be?
If I could take away one habit, it would be not to worry about everything. And if I would add in, it would probably be to replace that, which would just be to take things as they come and deal with them as they come and not try to predict the future, because all the thoughts that you're having probably won't happen, because that's how anxiety works. It makes you think about things that do not exist. May the source, the original source, be true. Yes. But everything else that you think up until that point, no. Like, that's not, like, even I'm thinking about when I did the live podcast with you in January, the whole time I'm walking up, I was like, girl, you're going to fall. You're going to fall in front of all these people and you're just going to fall. You're going to bust your head open. You're going to or you're going to stutter the whole time you're talking. None of that happened. It's all just, you're fearful. So let's go ahead and take that fear out. Let's be grateful. One thing at a time. That's what I would change.
Yeah. Fearful, grateful. Wow. So what is your favorite book or movie and why?
I've always loved The Notebook, which I know is sappy for a lot of people. But I don't know. I think it's just like I'm a person that loves love, like just like genuine, authentic. So I always liked that movie. But I also liked it in college. So I was at a different place, but I still like it. If I like to laugh, Bridesmaids. The scene on the plane cracks me up every single time. Me and my best friend will repeat all the quotes from that movie. But it's just because it makes us feel good, I guess, is why I like that one. Yeah, nothing deep.
What's your biggest fear?
Failure. And I know that sounds cliche, but it is. But more not failure like, oh, I'm not going to do what I want to do with healthy pleasures, or I'm not going to do, but failure like within myself. Like, I didn't give myself the opportunity to be who I can be. I got stuck. I got scared. So I stopped working on that. And now this is just who I am. Like, I don't want to be that. Like, I don't want to finally have kids and start a family and I'm still at 0 to 1,000. Cannot do that. That's not what I want to give them, because now I'm just giving them the same thing that I said I didn't want to. So I think that is kind of how I see failure, and not necessarily goal wise like most of us do.
They just get into a place, and then now once you get to the place, sometimes you can be locked into a bad place because now you're thinking, if you made a mistake, I get it, because it can be even more fearful. It's like, okay, once, like you said, once you get the kids, and now all of a sudden, the first 2 years, maybe you are hot. Not first 2 years, probably the toddler years. The little kid, you ain't gonna be that. But 2 to 5, now you jumping off. And then at 5, you're looking like, dang, what have I become?
Right.
And they never change.
Right.
Because you're like, well, it's already done now.
Yeah. And now you created kids in that environment. So now you perpetuated the cycle. Now they're angry too. I don't.
If you were the president of the United States, what's the first thing you would do?
Increase financial funding for mental health treatment and resources, and stop putting money into the prison system, and put more money into rehabilitation than to locking people in cells and cages.
Yeah,
because right now we're dealing with a Medicaid reform where they're going to try to take away a lot of our resources and a lot of our money to outsource it to other things. And then they wonder why things are going the way that they go.
Yeah, I was listening. Everybody always hears about the whole, but yesterday I don't know how I got to talk about the whole. I don't know who I was talking to that we mentioned it, but the whole is literally somebody kind of described it, and it's like the size of this desk. In the sum, there's all different, but it's like a desk. There's no light, and you could be in there for some people a day, some people multiple days. I'm like, how
in prison?
Yeah. Like, how does that?
Yeah, they dehumanize people in prison. Like, people develop mental health diagnosis from, like, you can't be in the dark for too long or by yourself. Like, we thrive off of human interaction with, like, that's how we thrive. Think about when you are, even for me, like if I do not like sleeping in the dark. I'll be the first person to say that I have a nightlight and I do not care because the dark will play tricks on you. Like there's even research around if you look at yourself in the dark in the mirror for a certain amount of time, it'll start to alter what you see. Imagine being in a dark room by yourself for like days and hours at a time. That would make anybody lose it. But try that. The mirror thing, it'll scare you though.
I'm not about to try that. I was thinking about that right now.
I tried it and I did a post on Facebook to see what other people's experiences were. You will scare yourself.
Man, scare yourself. I'll probably die in there, man. I seen that Candyman. Like, what?
Right.
Come on, bro. Like, I don't believe in that stuff. But there are spirits.
It could be true.
Hey, there's spirits, man. Like, God didn't know. There's spirits and demons still on this earth.
A lot of people don't believe that.
I don't know, man. They can have that. So
I'm with you.
Yeah, there's definitely. I mean, you've seen it. You probably, as a therapist, you've probably seen a lot. But there are demons. But and that's my opinion and my thoughts on that. My people, my scholars out there, like, what? Gee, no, we just here for the interview. All right, so we done with the culture change round, man. I have one last question. Every single person that comes on the show is a culture change agent in their own right, in their own lane. So this one goes to that. If you could change one thing about society, most specifically our African-American culture, what would it be and why?
To be more vulnerable and allow ourselves to feel. And within our own vulnerable place, to be more compassionate and less judgmental to other people because their issue could easily become our issue. And then how are we going to look at it? Then you're going to want compassion from somebody. Then you're going to want somebody to understand. But if you just offer that from the beginning, then that's easier to get versus falling and being in a place where you've been judging people all this time and they know you've been judging and now you want help. So that's what I would say. I'm big on letting people be human these days. Like, I appreciate people who are authentically themselves. If you want to dance out in the middle of the floor and look the way you look and do what you do, that's you. You happy and you enjoying your life. That don't have nothing to do with me. If you want to become somebody else, that's on you. It does not affect my life. Like, just be yourself. Don't let nobody take that away from you.
So, man, like I said, this was a very like phenomenal show with different pockets of different information of mantras, mindsets, and this is just a taste. This is like, I don't want to scare people. This is like 50% of what you're gonna get in the code for the culture. Where and on some episodes, probably 10%. This is diluted. Like that one is
watered down.
That's more like the what's the alcohol people used to have in college where it's dangerous. The dangerous one. Everclear. Yeah, like we like the liqueur.
Right, Four Loko.
Yeah. Man, hell no. Four Loko like an Everclear. People die before Loko.
What is worse, Four Loko or Everclear? That's not what the show's about. That's not what the show's about.
Probably Four Loko. Four Loko, like the original Four Loko was
the rat poison.
You could literally die. Yeah. Like I had 2 of them one night and I woke out.
What happened? I don't know. It was all a blur. Yeah.
Yeah. Everclear, it just put you out. It should. I don't know.
It makes some people angry.
I can imagine. I remember all those Riverwalk days. You went to UNCG, so you weren't that far off. Like Everclear and all those parties and people, man, I pray for our students out there. And y'all know, a lot of mature students listen to this. Yeah, don't just be drinking all alcohol from anybody, especially as you get older too.
Right,
please.
Make smart decisions.
Yeah, like, I mean, imagine, man, I'm at a party, people just handing you cups. You good? Like, no, you're not.
You don't know what's in there.
But that's definitely not here, man. So, Tiana, can you share with us where people can find more information about you, what you do, and all that good stuff outside of, remember, every single Wednesday, until we go until the end of season 1. So we got about 4 months of great content coming at you. Code for the Culture podcast available by the time of this episode on all platforms. But outside of that, where can they find more information about you, Healthy Pleasures, your book, and all that good stuff?
So I'm currently revamping my website. So I kind of don't want to give that, but I'm gonna give it anyway. So that is www.healthypleasuresinc.org. That has all the information about the organization. I haven't added stuff up there yet about the podcast, but I will add stuff about that. Links to buy my books are up there. We talked about that earlier. I have a journal that I wrote for women in particular to help around their journey to self and self-awareness, and self-love. And then I also have 2 self-care planners, one that I created for men, which is a code for the culture, but women can still buy that too. And then for the love of self-care, which just promotes self-care on a weekly, daily, monthly basis and not just a hot topic or this is how I'm going to take care of myself today. No, you have to take care of yourself every day. So that's my website. I'm also on social media on Instagram at Healthy Pleasures Inc. All one word. I'm on Facebook. I keep trying to change the name, but it will not let me. So it is Healthy Pleasures Tiana. I don't know why. Right. It will not let me change it. I do not know why. So that's on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter, but I don't really use Twitter. It's more so whatever I post on Instagram goes straight to Twitter. And that's H Pleasures Inc. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think those are all mine. And then email.
Yeah, I mean, healthypleasures@gmail.com.
Healthypleasuresinfo@gmail.com.
All right, well, hey, Minority Trailblazer Nation, you know what to do. After this episode, definitely send a thank you, blah, 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 all that good stuff. And definitely check out the Code for the Culture podcast coming every single Wednesday to you live and direct, man. So Minority Trailblazer Nation, I need you to do 2 things and 2 things only. Number 1, make sure you tell a friend and tell a friend and tell a friend and leave a review. And then number 2, make sure you changing the freaking culture. Good night.